We gotta go to the bullpen. Hello, listeners, and a warm welcome to the Highland Bullpen Baseball and Sports Podcast. Our Bullpen Bros will give a uniquely Scottish take on America's pastime. And in terms of baseball knowledge, it doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer heading for Cooperstown or you're fresh out of the minor leagues. This is the podcast for you. Hello, baseball fans everywhere, and welcome back to the Highland Bullpen. Just the three Bullpen Bros this week, myself, Dave Sr. and Alan, but there's plenty to talk about. Alan has been over in Seattle. He has been our man on the ground, checking out this year's Seattle Mariners and what could well be a historic year, with the Mariners currently around about 80% probability of making the playoffs, according to those big brains at 538.com. So it's looking good for the Mariners, and Alan will to tell us at first hand whether he thinks they've got the chops to make it to the postseason and how far they could go as they continue to chase that elusive first World Series appearance. Now, a team with a lot more experience of the World Series, the Boston Red Sox, but unfortunately it has been, if not a year to forget, a challenging year. And we've got Yorkshire Dave here who'll be ready to update us on what's been happening with the boys from Fenway Park. But I think we'll start this week by going over to Alan, who can share his experiences, I say, over in Seattle, seeing it firsthand how the Mariners got on. Obviously more used to seeing the Detroit Tigers, Alan, but what was your experience of the Mariners and of Seattle?
Yeah, fantastic experience, I think, is the headline. I'm delighted to have the chance to chat with you guys and let people listen to my experiences. I'll maybe stop short of saying I developed a soft spot for one of the other teams, particularly as we've already got you supporting them within the bullpen already, but it was great. I think there's probably a few aspects of my trip were great. I was lucky enough, the way my trip worked out, to see the Mariners 4 times. I'm not sure how many major league games I've seen in my time, but I've certainly don't think I've ever gone on a trip and done more than a couple of games. So I think a few things come out of that. Sat in 4 different parts of the stadium, or the ballpark, T-Mobile Park. That's to be recommended for relative baseball rookies. I think as we understand the game better and better, actually sitting in the 4 different places gave you very different perspectives on the game and what was going on. Thoroughly enjoyed that. It's a nice stadium. Interestingly, for I think the rainy city or the rainy town they call it, they have a sort of umbrella roof. So it's an open stadium, but they have this umbrella roof, which I think I did the stadium tour. So I think it sort of is pulled out in rainy weather. And the only time they've had a cancellation since opening the stadium was, interestingly, against the Tigers, but they just couldn't get the roof to open that day, I believe. But highlights, 4 games, 2 wins for Seattle, 2 defeats, 1 defeat off the Angels. That game maybe wasn't quite as spicy as I might have hoped. I know we've spoken before about there's a bit of a rivalry, I think, between the 2 teams there. The Angels won the game, I think, just by 1 run. The Seattle do seem to have a thing with 1-run wins, whether that ultimately causes them an issue or 1-run games leading up to the playoffs, we'll see. But definite highlight, hate to say it, but 2 games against the Yankees. The atmosphere, if I've been to 20 major league games, the atmosphere at games involving the Yankees and close games is actually, as a fan of sport, is noticeably different from other baseball games I've been to. In my simplistic view, I'll put that down to 2 things. The Yankees probably have supporters in every city in the US, and that's probably a bit like Rangers and Celtic in Scotland. Wherever you go, you will find plenty of Yankees fans, which will be people who've moved from New York, but also people will support them because they're either the Yankees. So they bring a big support. So you get a good mixed audience. But the standard of play in the both games I saw with the Yankees was exceptional. A lot of star names there, especially when you look at the Yankees. You had Aaron Judge, DJ LeMahieu, etc. All these guys coming in. You're seeing a number of the superstars of the game, and it culminated in my last game I saw, which was the classic 13th inning game where the Mariners scored the only run of the game in the bottom of the 13th. It was a walk-off single which drove in one of their guys to record a win. I was conscious it was quite late. I think I texted you guys at some point in the 13th innings because it was like 11:30 or 11:45 Seattle time. And I thought, well, you guys must be getting up to go to work by this point. What I did do by texting you was, of course, 2 minutes later, the game was over. But it's hard to believe if we look back 5 years, you could have watched 12 and a half scoreless innings of baseball and thought you'd just seen the best game ever. So the quality of play, the rivalry there, and again, I guess the rivalry in terms of, and people forgive me for this as well, but I suspect fans of every team in Scottish football probably take a little bit more satisfaction beating Rangers and Celtic, and the same will be said in Major League Baseball with the good old Yankees. I ended up, I was sat up high up on that game, but I actually thought I wanted to, it was my last night, I had to be up early the next day. I thought I'll make sure I can nip away early and get an Uber back to the Airbnb I was in. So I ended up watching with 3 or 4 innings, standing pretty much behind home plate at the back of the first tier stands beside a few Yankees fans. But you start to feel that little bit of animosity and that there as well, which I have to admit I enjoyed. And yeah, the Mariners, let's have a wee look. When I saw that first game, they went 52-45. I'm trying to think. So that was, let me have a wee look. That was trying to think where they are after seeing the last game. I can't keep up with my dates anymore, so I'm trying to think what game this was. But they must be there. They've certainly moved on from there, whilst the Yankees have faltered a bit as well. But they're certainly moving into a good place. They've got good, fantastic to see the pitching. The 1-0 game. They had the chap was making his debut for the Mariners in that game. If I'll go and find his
Castillo,
yeah, he did well. Absolutely fantastic. Both pitchers, I think, went into the high numbers for the number of pitches they threw that night, and why wouldn't they when they're at that state? You do wonder when you start getting to 13th innings, but do they still have a bullpen left? Are they going to have to start looking elsewhere? But no, exciting times in Seattle. And I think that contributed to the overall feeling and atmosphere we saw I felt in the stadium as well. So I absolutely loved it. I'd love to see the Mariners go forward and pull something out here and actually make themselves get to the playoffs.
I'm just looking at the box score, Al, and a lot of people listening might think, no runs scored, well, one run in 13 innings, isn't that a bit boring? Then I looked at there's 5 double plays in the game, and the defense, when it works well, it's like clockwork, isn't it? It really is impressive. We saw a little bit of that at London, didn't we? MLB thing, was it? And yeah, it's much underrated, isn't it? Pitching and the defense, but I think it's making a bit of a comeback, isn't it? You know, people, you never get tired of home runs, but I think you saw it was billed as an instant classic, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the double plays thing was fascinating. I've always appreciated a double play because I've appreciated it and been frustrated by it for two reasons. You've appreciated it because you thought that's fast, and as the pitching team, that's just such a clever way to get two guys out. I've got frustrated by it because the number of times I've been to like a Tigers game and they've got a couple of men on base, they've got one out, and you think we're going to score here. And it started done. You get it more and more, but when you're actually watching that live, and one of the Yankees fans stood beside me at the end of that game, said, "Oh, it's going to take a miracle to get out of this situation a couple of the times for the Yankees." They know what pitches to throw to get the double play. They can control. These pitchers are that good. They can almost control, especially the bullpen guys. They can control how the batter's going to react, where the ball's going to go, and the infield are all ready to make sure they get that double play.
Yeah, I've even heard it say that, they might say there's a guy on second base, no on first, just one out. You might even consider him walking a guy and to bring in the double play, and then deliberately throw, sort of a low slider or something like that to try and get that ground ball so they get the two outs.
I'm not sure if they did it, but certainly there was calls from those around me to load the bases at points by walking the guy.
Yeah.
And again, as if you don't understand the game, you're thinking, why would you risk that? Now, it's sudden death situation, so there's a logic in the sudden death that you think, well, you don't let Aaron Judge come up here and melt one into the stratosphere. But what you're doing is you're saying, no, I'll walk them because actually I've got more chance now of getting a double play. And it's just...
Yeah. He walked twice in that game. And in the recent series, I think the Red Sox walked him quite a lot as well. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. So, it's a big part of the game, isn't
it? Yeah. It's good as well because in terms of the atmosphere, you're also getting the fans are booing when somebody chooses to walk somebody. So I think you're not giving us a fair chance to hit it, but you're allowed to walk. It's classic management. It's classic sport and baseball. You're using the rules and what you're allowed to do to get the best result for your team.
Well, who was that manager recently who, and it did backfire in the end, but the bases were loaded. They had something like they have a 2 or 3 run lead, and he instructed, I don't know who was up batting, but it was obviously a power hitter, and he instructed them to walk in a run so that they could face the next guy to get the out. And it did backfire, but he said that was his reasoning behind it, and he stands and falls on that judgment.
Yeah.
A bold one, that.
Yeah. I think the Yankees fans I was listening to felt that their manager was probably not making those decisions as often as it could. And there might be a fear from some of these guys, and there shouldn't be a fear for these heavily paid guys. They need to stand or fall by their decision, but you will look stupid if you make that decision and you get beat. But it was incredible watching that. It's incredible watching the pictures. It was incredible watching. There was a lot of times people were on base and you thought, oh, it's a good chance, but the defensive plays were out of there. And there was like one of the extra innings as well. Like there's a cracking line drive. It looked to me, the guy hit the ball really well, cracking line drive, but the infielder catches the ball. He gets to base, he gets to second base, and he gets a guy going to first out, and then they chuck it over to first as well. And you think the ability to catch that ball, he knows that's what he's trying to do. Then he knows as soon as he does it, he runs the base, tags a base, and then he goes and throws the ball as well. The reflexes, and again, I don't know, but people around you are sort of thinking that was a stupid hit for the guy to take on. But you thought, well, they're also trying to win the game as well. So
you've got to act very quickly, haven't they, the defensive guys? I can't remember which game I was watching the other night, but they had a guy mic'd up and he was playing second base, and the game's going on, and he's just, talking to the guys, and then he goes a bit quiet because the guy is just in his wind up, and he just going to this, oh, here we go, and he was involved in a double play.
Yeah,
so cool.
Yeah,
and that was it, guys. Thanks for that. They just ran off.
Yeah.
In over.
And
can't remember who it was, but it was terrific.
And defense is very important for the Mariners as well, Alan, because for all their success this year so far, I hasten to add, they don't score a whole lot of runs. Their defense is good, they've pitched well, but they're still not scoring a whole lot of runs. So it's all the more important that we make those double plays, that we give nothing away.
So one of the other fantastic things about that 13 inning games was having watched the game the night before, and this again is one of the really interesting things about baseball compared to football, where it's weekly and the good teams. When I saw the Yankees the night before, I think it was 9-4, they won. Judge ended the night then as the top guy for hits, home runs, and batting percentage across the whole league. They looked phenomenal that night, the Yankees. And I thought, that's a top quality team who are hitting what they want and scoring when they want. So then to see them the next night, the same guys up against a different pitcher with a very different result, that again just shows you the level of brilliance from Castillo that night when he was pitching. And I think that's some of this sport is so unique compared to the sports that we generally watch here, and that's a lot of that then comes from like starting pitchers and sometimes superstars of teams might be missing, which makes a difference as well. But fantastic, and I enjoyed the sunset views from T-Mobile Park. If you sit in the far corner overlooking second base, that must be some of the best views in baseball as well. So I had some great experiences there, Richard. Biggest disappointment at T-Mobile Park. I loved the fact that I did the stadium tour, which was great. Excited to see Mike Cameron had his picture up in the room. So Daz Cameron's old man. So good to see him well respected there as a great player for the Mariners. They have the flags of all the American League teams on the stadium as well. And I took the view, that's a really nice thing to see the support of the American League and showing all the different teams for the leagues. But they unfortunately pointed out on the tour that they have the flags in the divisional order, which explained maybe why the Tigers and the Red Sox came at the end of those particular orders for their divisions. But so there's a logic. It's like the old-fashioned scoreboard at the football where somebody would do the halftime scores.
Yeah.
You go out there and change it. So I was excited to see a Tigers flag. I was then disappointed to realise why it was in that position it was in.
There it was. And how does T-Mobile Stadium stack up against Comerica Park, Alan?
It's coming close. Can I say that? Yeah. Comerica felt like it had a little bit more inside it. A few more statues. They've got their wee tiger carousel. So a wee bit more fun stuff inside the stadium. It looks great. it's a fantastic setting. It's a well-designed setting. It's probably most modern baseball grounds are, that you can go and sit most places and see the game well. Outside the stadium, a couple of statues, including for Ken Griffey there as well. So you hear all about the Griffey father and son combination. The suites, we'll never go to the suites, I guess. But in the tour, you go and see the suites. And interestingly, there's something about the history there, like a 1970s team, I think, the Mariners.
Yep, 77. Yep.
But all their suites are named after the greats. And what I found surprising was that they're the greats of baseball. So, like, there's a Ty Cobb suite, the Georgia Peach, who played for the Tigers. But what they're saying is they don't have the history to then really have suites there for the Mariners greats. So they've chosen to then go through the baseball greats and have all of them. And we were taken into one of the suites. Hopefully they're not listening. I did sneak into the Ty Cobb suite because they had like old-fashioned, the original jerseys that these guys would have worn. So there's a bit of a reflection on my picture, but I've got a nice wee picture of the shirt that Ty Cobb would have worn back in the day. At least
didn't pinch it, Alan, that's one thing.
They should be grateful. They should be grateful. So.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, Alan, that's I think it says something, hopefully says something about the Mariners spirit. They're happy to honour other teams' baseball greats, but tell you, they might well have a name for a suite to come in the future, and possibly even a statue to rival Griffey's as time goes by, because Julio Rodriguez, who's kind of exploding into the baseball scene this year, has got to be the most exciting young talent I've seen at the Mariners for many, many years, and I'm hopeful that he can be, as I say, the Mariners are a solid to good team in most areas this year, and consistent to go with it. But you mentioned just that special, that bit of stardust that gets sprinkled throughout the teams that go on to do really well. And as I say, I'm hopeful that he can provide that to take Seattle into the postseason. And if he can do that, and if the Mariners can support him, we'll see how far they can go. I'm really, really optimistic and excited. But I noticed as well, I think it was Yorkshire Dave in a previous one of the episodes mentioned about a 5-tool player. I think that might have been the description that was given. Yorkshire Dave, and from memory, I think that's someone that can hit for power, hit for average, good fielder, quick, and a good thrower as well. And Rodriguez, certainly at this early stage, and it's still early, but he seems to have every single tool in the locker. And if he keeps progressing as he has so far in his short career, I think we could have another one in years to come. We look back, the same way Mariners fans look back and, Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, Edgar Martinez, Randy Johnson, some of the greatest names of baseball in recent years have come through Seattle. So, really, really exciting. I don't know, Yorkshire Dave, if Julio Rodriguez is one you've been keeping an eye on this year, but he's certainly touted as a potential AL Rookie of the Year at the very least.
Yeah, I know he's a Dominican Republic guy, isn't he? And they do produce more than their fair share of great players, don't they? Red Sox have had a few, so he's only 21, isn't he?
Incredible, so yes, he is.
It's super young to be there and doing it. What's it? I don't know what his background was. Was he a draft pick, or did you just get him from your operation
I'm sure he was drafted. Yeah, I think that's maybe when he spent one of our best draft picks. I'm sure to get him, which would make sense.
Yeah, let's hope it. Whatever injury he's got just now is just temporary, and we see him in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's where you want great players to be. A great story, great story behind him there as well. 21, Alan. I don't know what we were doing at 21, but we certainly weren't taking Major League Baseball by storm.
I could tell you what I did on my 21st birthday, but you wouldn't appreciate that, Richard.
Is it not suitable for work, Alan, or is it?
It's not suitable for somebody of your footballing allegiances.
Okay. Well, that's not too bad. I'm open-minded when it comes to these things, Alan.
You probably one of the best goals Rangers have scored in an Old Firm game was my 21st birthday. Davy Cooper back flick to Ian Durant. at Ibrox. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. And was that in a victory, I'm guessing, Alan?
It was a 1-0 victory. It was the only goal of the game. And I probably drank more than J. Rod, a professional athlete, would drink that night as well. But I did actually see him. I think he's been injured, but he actually homered in the first game I saw him. And you'll be pleased to know he homered against Rangers, who they beat that night as well. So
fantastic. The Rangers, who have in fact sacked their manager. They sacked their coach today. The Texas Rangers gave Chris Woodward the boot. So that was one of the, I guess, part of the kind of slide they've had, which ultimately cost Chris Woodward his job today. So tough times for Rangers, Alan. Only unfortunately, from my perspective, it's from the Texas variety rather than the Glasgow side.
Yeah. So no, a great trip. Thanks for asking about it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Recommend. Lovely stadium. Well set out. Exciting team to watch. Whether I should say, if you're getting a chance to go and watch teams you don't support, it'll tend to be when you're there on holiday. But going to see them against the Yankees might not be the worst thing you could do in the world for a wee bit of excitement. So did that, and also managed to catch a soccer game at Lumen Field when I was there, the home of the Seahawks. So that is ticked off the Footballogy app now as well, I'm pleased to say. So these are life's priorities have been dealt with, and squeezed an Alaskan cruise in the middle of it, Richard. So there you go.
Oh, that sounds excellent, Alan. And actually, obviously women's and girls football more generally, football played by women's and girls has quite rightly got a lot of positive coverage and is in a better place and a fairer place these days in the sporting kind of theatre. But I remember playing on holiday in Seattle and playing football 25 years ago. Obviously, I was very, very young, obviously. But it was the first time I'd ever played football in a mixed environment where men and women in the same team, and I couldn't get my Neanderthal West of Scotland brain around this concept. So I'm glad that the game's evolved, and I might even have evolved a little bit as well. Who knows? But yes, that was one of my big memories as well. I often think about it now that women's football is finally getting its place as well. But it's a great city as well, Alan.
Yeah, enjoyed the city. You've obviously got Pike's Place Market, the historical fish market. Also, when you go downstairs in the market, they've got your usual curio shops. So I went into like the sports card shop. In fact, I've got a picture of something I was going to send Dave Senior there. So I like that stuff. Obviously, I'm not into collecting baseball stuff. I've accumulated enough tat in my life. I will accumulate stuff from games I go to and what have you. But I'm fascinated by it, and there's guys in there asking if the boys got cards of such and such and what have you. So I love that sort of stuff. In amongst the usual stores you'd see in there, they've got the Space Needle. I think that was built for one of the World Expos. Lucky enough, I did like a Puget Bay, if that's the right way to pronounce it. Sailing,
Puget Sound and stuff. Yep.
Puget Sound, yeah, sailing trip, and we saw a bunch of orca whales. Nice bars we go to. Surprisingly, this is the west of Scotland thing as well. A number of these bars tended to close quite early.
Before you drank them dry, Alan, was that?
Whether they saw us coming or not, I'm not sure. But and yeah, we did the underground trip tour as well, which actually gave a lot of history of Seattle, and I like it's interesting to go away and learn how Seattle became Seattle, how it made itself a major city, what it made its money on, and how it got its place, and the layout of the city, which is interesting as well. So without spoiling it for people, I'd say, you've got the All-Star game next year. So if people are thinking about it, there's a city you can go and visit, and you'll see interesting stuff when you get there. So every place has its interesting stuff to go and see.
Absolutely. Well, what we'll do now is we'll travel 3,000 miles east is what we'll do, and we'll wind up in Boston. And Yorkshire Dave, your Red Sox, I know you've remained relatively upbeat despite their kind of roller coaster season. But what's your latest take on how the Red Sox are doing?
Yeah, well, as Alan rightly said, they find themselves back at the bottom of the AL East, back under 500, a record of 57 wins, 59 losses. But they're only, I say only, they're only 4.5 games out of the sixth wild spot. So it's doable, but I can't say I'm as confident as I was in the lead up to the All-Star break. Good result, a 2-1 win, series win against the Yankees at Fenway Park, which they did play well, pitched well, and in fact, I guess they might have swept them. I think the game they lost was only by 1 run, but one of their wins was a walk-off win. So yeah, you'll take a 2-1 win against the Yankees. Rest day today, and then they're on the road to play the Pirates, who are 45 and 70. So with due respect to the Pirates, that sounds like a must-sweep series. Is there such a thing as that? And then it's 3 games against the Orioles, who are just above them in the league. So 5 or 6 games, if they could go on a streak, could put them back in it, but it's a big ask. It all started going a little bit wrong at the wrong time, because in the lead up to the All-Star game and the trade deadline, you need to be, we talked about this before, haven't you? You need to be in a good position and likely to reach the playoffs for your owners and your general manager to think, right, we're going to improve the team because we've got a chance of qualifying. If you're on a losing streak and it looks like you're not going to make the playoffs, then they bail out and become a selling club. Now, just before the deadline, they started going on a bad streak, and there was talk of them selling, quite a few of the players. In the end, they actually picked up a couple of guys. The one guy that they sold, it was really poorly treated. Christian Vasquez, the catcher, who was, I think he's the longest serving player on the roster. To say he was poorly treated is an understatement. He was actually in his Red Sox uniform taking batting practice at the Astros when he was told he had been traded to the Astros. And, the journalists were all around him asking him questions. The guy was stunned. It looked as though he was almost, he was speechless and almost in tears. And his teammates pulled him away. And, it was really shocking. But I guess sometimes that happens. But I thought that was pretty crass, actually. They picked up a couple of guys. This guy, outfielder Tommy Pham, he's had a great start. He then endeared himself to Red Sox Nation with their walk-off hit the other night against the Yankees. They've got themselves an experienced first baseman in Eric Hosmer, and they didn't trade JD Martinez. So I think that was, it's kind of the argument. Now, the Red Sox fans are a bit, they're like the Yankees fans. They'll get on the team and the owners and the GM if they think they're not investing the money. And, this Vasquez thing is a little bit older than they got another catcher in who's younger. And it's all about saving money and getting prospects for the future. But what the Red Sox fans want, they want a winning team, and they want it now. So not trading JD, that's the general manager can turn around and say, well, we weren't a selling team. We still have hope for this year. So whether it comes off or not, I don't know. They've had the fair share of injuries, which other clubs do, but I think it's hit them pretty hard. And Chris Sale, have you heard the story about him? Poor fella was, since this trade, he's only this is 3 years ago. He's only started 20 odd games. He was out all, had that. Was it him who had Tommy John surgery? No. Anyway, was out pretty much all last season, then came back, pitched quite well. Then he had some kind of issue with his back and missed most of the start of this season. Came back, pitched 1 game pretty well. Then he came in and pitched his 2nd game and was broke his pinky on his pitching hand, I think, in one of these sort of comebacker hits. Then he was coming back from that pretty well, and there's some sort of mysterious injury where he was cycling back from a rehab game, and he's supposed to have fallen off his bike. And nobody's witnessed this. And I listened to this podcast, and they're getting right into it and saying, we just don't believe this guy is up to something. And they went in this long list of funny issues, like players, they're just normal guys, apart from being professional athletes. A lot of them are nutters, and race around on ATVs, was it all-terrain vehicles. And they kept citing one or two players who said they'd had this injury, playing catch or whatever, or stubbing the toe getting out of bed or whatever. And it turned out they'd been messing about on an all-terrain vehicle. So anyway, he's getting a lot of stick now from the fans saying, we're not getting the money's worth out of him. So he's out for the rest of the season. But there's quite a few good things happening. There's some good starting pitching. Evaldi, Pivetta, Michael Walker came back last night, pitched brilliantly. Even the bullpen's going really well, and Gareth Whitlock's looking like a closer or an end inning guy, and so is Tanner Houck, but he's gone on the injured list as well, but hopefully that's not serious. But will they make the postseason? I think it's slightly less than 50-50. They've really got to do well in those next 6 games, because I think right after that, they've got the Jays and the Rays at Fenway, which, their record, I think that series against the Yankees is the only series they've won against a team in their league. So, that makes it doubly difficult to qualify, doesn't it? Because I think 3 of them are in, obviously the Yankees are top, and the next 2, I think, are in wildcard spots, aren't they? Then it's the Mariners, isn't it, in the 3rd spot, I think. So, yeah, I've always got hope. I think they just need a bit of inspiration. I think they've got a good manager. Cora will get them going. And, look at Tommy Pham. Fantastic. It's you need guys like that. But that Christian Vasquez, he was great in the clubhouse as well. But I think that was just business. But yeah, it was a really dreadful image, him being told on the field of play that he's being traded to the guy's opponents, and he's still in his Red Sox. That's a very rare thing in other sports, I think. But still keeping the faith.
Pleased to hear. I expect nothing less. And as you say, there is a path to the playoffs still for the Red Sox. But as you say, I expect them to have to win the vast majority of their upcoming 2 series. And then, as you say, then to step it up and find a way to beat those teams, as you say, the Rays and the Jays, that they've maybe struggled to beat those kind of teams before. Alan, it seems a bit unfair that we've got you to speak out the Mariners for most of the episode without giving you a chance to talk about the Tigers. And actually, you're quite fortunate as well, because Dave Jr. unfortunately couldn't join us tonight. And that might be just as well for you, Alan, because obviously his White Sox have just swept the series against the Tigers.
I think it's highly unfair of you to ask me about the Tigers and to chat about them, Richard. I was quite enjoying the Mariners chat and ignoring the realities of real life. 1 win in 11 games. Pretty poor form for a baseball team. Swept by the White Sox. 43 wins to date, so they need another 20 wins out of, 40, less than 50 games. I think 46 games. They need something like 20 wins out of 46 games to avoid losing 100 games in the season. So, yeah, we could move on quickly. I think that the fans, there we go. We know who I mean. The GM of the Tigers got the bullet last week, and that has gone down well generally with the Tigers fans. I think what's not gone down well is the GM, the owner, Aviva. He was the GM. The owner has basically said it wasn't him that made the trades that he was getting. The GM was getting the blame for, which is a bit a bit rich. I don't think he's the most popular chap either, although he does put the money into the club, possibly not the right amount of money. But I think the big thing now for the Tigers is to find a new GM. Let's see who they can come up with, and will that make a difference as they go forward. But very disappointing, having had a semi-decent season last year. And they had more winning months than losing months last year, I think. But this year just hasn't gone well at all. And 1 win in 11, yeah, that's poor.
Over his tenure with the Tigers, Avila, his overall record was round about 41% victories, I think, Alan, against kind of 58.8 or whatever defeats. So it was a kind of career just over 400 record for wins for the Tigers he had, well in charge. So, but as you say, they're kind of skewed a bit as well, because they are currently having a poor season, obviously. I will be interested to see which way they go next.
Yeah, it's got to be a big it's got to be a big appointment. And do the fans have the confidence in the ownership to get the right person in? I think they would be struggling to say yes just now. I think we have general feeling we get the right person in as AJ Hinch as the manager. Yep. But it's a different type of setup to, again, what we're used to in football. I suppose you do have your director of football, and the importance of that role is increasing all the time as well. That's the best analogy, but the GM is much more important in baseball, and most DFFs would be certainly at the level we would see in Scottish football as well. But these are the guys who do the trades. I'm guessing the manager's telling them what he's looking for, and they've got a budget, and they then go out and do what they can do. But yeah,
it's not always just about the big trades they're making for the roster either, is it? This is one of the criticisms that is laid at the Chaim Bloom's store, because he's a GM at Boston, and Boston sort of demand this sort of a competitive team every year, whereas he's quite a lot about prospects and building up their farm system. And listening to some of the critics are saying, yeah, we have to agree that he has improved our farm system. So you're getting much better players coming through the system. When they go down to, AAA or AA, bringing guys up, they've got some pretty good pitching prospects there, which they haven't really had before. But Boston say, well, we need both. We need a good farm system, and we need to spend the money to get the big players in. So, like the Yankees, this is why they're not universally, liked. They are a big team. They're like a Man United. They're like a Liverpool, who are always in, or used to be, whenever there's a big player in for trade, then Boston's one of the teams that talked about. But that wasn't the case this time at all, and I don't think it has been for a few years. And that Mookie Betts trade is rearing its ugly head again. And when you look at Benintendi now, he's playing brilliant outfield for the Yankees at his first time back at Fenway Stadium, and it's a little bit tough to take actually. And if they don't qualify for the postseason this year, what's going to happen with Bogarts and Devers, who haven't signed up new contracts yet? And if they were to go, then I think you would see some kind of revolution, not for the first time in Boston area.
So it's the right city. It's the right place for it, certainly.
Yes, yeah, we're sort of. So it's a long time since I've been there, but I think the first time I went, Lorraine and I did quite a few touristy things, and we ended up on that. What they call the ship that stood in the harbour, and you can go on there and you can reenact when they threw the tea off the boat because of the taxis on the tee. And I was one of the guys who got some guys dressed up as Indians to come and attack them, and then we threw these tea chests off But it's a great day. You know, I'd love to go back. I haven't been back for about 20 years, but need to get back there and get back to Fenway.
Absolutely. Well, here's hoping there's better news and better results at Fenway for the remainder of the 2022 MLB season. That's it, folks. That's the Highland Bullpen for this time out. Be sure to join us next time. And once again, thanks for listening.